for CT Fertility in general is the principle of maximizing the amount of control and choice that you're able to exercise based on the options that we give to you. And so we spend a lot of time at the very beginning of the process, before we dive into any nuts and bolts or any specific agendas or plans, listening to your ideas of what you think and want your family to be and look like in a year and in 3 years and in 5 years, because family building can sometimes have short-term and long-term trajectories. Sometimes we focus only on the short-term ones. And giving you the techniques and ranges of donor selections and other guidances that maximize both your short-term and your long-term goals. Are you a single person wants one baby one time? Are you a couple that wants twins the first time, maybe one from both dads? Are you a couple who maybe wants to have children, like the doctor on the panel this morning, one at a time, more sequentially? And believe it or not, there are strategies and choices regarding your egg donor and your surrogate and the type of IVF cycle that you do that will significantly increase your likelihood of achieving those goals. So we spend a lot of time at the beginning in the thought process before we move into the matching process. The matching process we do under our own roof, because I feel like one of the strengths that we have and one of the things we invest the most amount of professional and personal and emotional energy in is the cultivation of our egg donor program, which is, actually, I want to say it's unique in a couple ways. One of the things that our egg donation programs provides are donors that are pre-screened to the point of maximizing pregnancy rates. So from a medical point of view, like one of the doctors said this morning, there's lots of tests that have to go on to differentiate the medical superiority of maybe 5% of the women who apply, which are the percent that we choose. We want to know how many eggs they're going to produce and their quality, so that you have the option to say, I want all the eggs. She's going to probably have 20 eggs. I'm going to do a full unshared cycle. I and my partner are going to get them all. We'll split them up however we decide, and so on. Or maybe you'll say, you know what, let's do a half cycle. We'll save money, and we won't create all these extra embryos that we probably don't want or probably don't need, and prorate cycles down to now 10 eggs, even 5 eggs. People can choose fresh eggs, or from our donor frozen egg bank, frozen eggs, which can be in quantities as small as 5. But it's all about this concept of your family, your way. So it's not that we do things the same way ever. Some couples will take 20 eggs, but maybe only fertilize 5 from each dad, and take the other 10 and just freeze them. Just say, we don't even know we don't know who's going to be the first biological father if we don't get twins. And we want to make sure that for the dad that doesn't, that there's going to be not only the embryos that we created this time, but extra eggs to support that process. So the donor part of our medical care is, I think, probably the cornerstone of it. Strongly encourage non-anonymous egg donations. We're well aware that in the US, 90% of egg donations are strictly anonymous, which means you never meet the donor and she never meets you, and there's no identifying shared information. And then you take the other 10%, and I would bet we're probably 90% of those, because it's an option we encourage our donors to exercise as much as we do the dads. I think for anyone who's going to be having conversations sooner or later, which pretty much everyone is, about the process and all the people involved and the pieces and the choices that were made, we know overwhelmingly from many of the dads over the years that the authenticity and the ease of those conversations is greatly enhanced by some kind of communication at some point. Even if you feel like, I get it, she's great, she's awesome, she's pretty, she's smart. I've seen her video, which most of our donors have. I like her, I really don't need to meet her. I'm feeling good enough about this. The meeting can potentially have value to you later or to your children later, even if it's not necessary to you right now. So the non-anonymous part of our donation, as well as the shared and the prorated, I think are important. And differentiate us in some ways. The last thing about our egg donors, I think it's unique, is we guarantee that you'll get 15 eggs from your egg donor if you're not sharing a cycle, because we have so many frozen eggs on so many of our donors that in the 10% of cycles in which you don't get 15 eggs or more, we can make up the difference. And all these things are at no cost, I should say. It's no cost to take some of your eggs and freeze some of your eggs and divvy them up and split them. I mean, it's just, we have one price for everything, and most people choose our unlimited plan, which is the same price as one cycle used to cost 2 years ago. It's basically you pay for an unlimited plan, and you keep doing your medical treatments until you have a baby, and you're not charged. If it doesn't work the first time, you do it a second. If it doesn't work the second time, we do it the third. You know, part of that sounds, I know it is really, I think, authentic. I also think it sounds hard to believe, but it's true. And I also think it's maybe not as amazing as it sounds, because most people actually get pregnant the first time. And by the second time, 95% of people are, you know, but if you're not, I mean, you can hear that and say, yeah, I'll probably take me 6 times because that's my life. So, you know what, if that's true, which I doubt it would be, then I can't hug you every night, but you got to deal with all the emotions and everything. But at least you're not going to be economically any more challenged than anybody else starting out. So the unlimited thing is something we started a year ago to specifically address the concerns that people have. Because we can make it really, I feel like we can make the process amazingly good. And I know we talked a lot about roller coasters today and ups and downs and support, you know, and I don't want to understate any of that, but I also think the process can be really fun and amazing and empowering and very gratifying. We can pretty much control the outcome from the technology that does exist. And so the rest of it involves your emotional investment, the relationships you form with everyone, especially your surrogate and maybe your donor, and the costs. So those are the areas we're working on now.
Can we answer some questions?
Yeah, maybe that's...
Anything in particular on your minds about the process or how the medical side of things work?
This whole process on your side, is any of it covered by insurance? If so, how so?
Yeah, unfortunately not a lot of it is covered by insurance for gay dads because a lot of it's fertility related, those codes are female codes because of fertility treatments. Some things might, some of those things might include like having a semen analysis, that's often covered by insurance. For surrogacy pregnancies, we have some screening requirements that are put forth by the FDA, like infectious disease screenings, things like that.
But those are on the dad's side.
On the dad's.
But those are small percentage.
Right. Yeah, unfortunately for egg donor treatments, she's, obviously not on your policy, so none of those costs, unfortunately, get covered by insurance, but a couple things for dads.
I'm going to put Victoria on the spot because Victoria's, one of the leading surrogacy attorneys in the country we work all the time with. You can find surrogates that can sometimes use their medical insurance to offset some of the pregnancy-related costs, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We look for surrogates with maternity policies that don't have exclusions, and that's a key for any budget concerns. And we work with a lot of people on with budget concerns, so it's important to have a surrogate with medical insurance that will cover maternity in the hospital.
I mean, the medical costs can range from $10,000 to $50,000 if you choose the most unlimited with embryo biopsy, and you're at the high end. And we actually have another fairly unique thing, which is our embryo donation program that we're really proud of. I think there's 3 in the country, and neither of the other two are in fertility clinics. And what it basically is when people much like you 5 or 10 years ago finished their, they put in 2 embryos and they got twins. And they bravely came back and put in 1 more 5 years and got 1. And they still have 13 frozen embryos, which are obviously very high quality because they keep working. And they were made from an egg donor. And they're extra. And everybody, when they freeze their embryos, regardless of where the eggs or the sperm come from, ultimately have choices. You keep them frozen, you use them all up, you discard them, you can donate them to science, or you can actually, this is where this is going, you can actually donate them to our embryo donation program. And what that actually is these are free and they're donated. It's a very much of a pay it forward kind of thing. People who would rather not discard their embryos and who feel like I wouldn't have my amazing kids if somebody didn't give me her eggs. And so I'm just so for people who are looking into adoption anyway, so you figure, well, you're past the whole genetic, it has to be my genetics. If you're adopting a baby or trying to, you can adopt these embryos instead. They're free. They're free. I mean, you still have the surrogate still has medical costs, and it's not that the whole thing is free, but there's no cost created with no cost associated with the creation of the embryos or harvesting of the eggs. You're not harvesting any eggs. We're really trying to think a lot in the last couple of years about approaching reproduction in much the same way we're beginning to think about approaching the environment and just the world in general. Let's create what we need, and let's use what we need, and let's make sure we achieve all our goals. But more is not always better or necessary. And so we're finding it's not hard for us to. I don't even think we encourage people. People are reaching out to us all the time with the desire to donate their embryos. Sort of the most ideal no-brainer person that would be an older woman who's single, because she needs a sperm donor anyway. So she needs an egg donor anyway, and that's basically what these embryos would be to her. But many of our gay and heterosexual couples, we're planning to use their own sperm. When push comes to shove, if it's like, I can't afford to do this, well, we just kind of try to layer in other things. Let's think of a way that we could do it way less expensively, and obviously it's not the same, but it might be the difference between doing something that leads to a child or nothing. So that goes back to, like I said, when we want to hear everything that you want to tell us in the first couple hours when we meet you, but we also want to make sure that you're going to let us share with you, maybe, did you think about this or did you think about that? Because you're most of you, I think, are at the beginning of a process that has a lot of choice associated with it, and sometimes those choices are not entirely obvious. And the technology keeps opening up more and more options for us.
I've heard different things about what acceptable BMIs would be for a surrogate. I've heard higher versus lower. Could you comment on that?
So a body mass index, a BMI, which is kind of weight, right? I mean, basically size. Women that have BMIs of over 32 are generally put into a category of, it's not about judging them, it's about associating a risk with an individual. Same thing, age. You could ask the same question, 40, 42, at what point do you say your BMI is too big, you're awesome, but you're just too overweight, or you're too old, or you're too, and clinics have different, I would say 32-ish, 34. There are some pretty heavy people that are, amazingly fit. And the agencies that I partner with the most, and prefer to partner with the most, are the agencies that don't have rigid guidelines. Because look, if you want to show me someone who's 30 years old, she's had 3 kids, her BMI is a little high, she just delivered twins a year ago, and at 37, and 2 years before that she delivered. You have to. I really hesitate to put one deal breaker in. There are some, but something, there's always a gray zone. And so somebody who's 42 with a borderline BMI, who had one baby 22 years ago, no, not so much. But maybe that same set of characteristics with a different, more recent positive experience with pregnancy, I'm pretty good with. Oh, that doesn't mean we'd accept her, it means we'd consider her. And then you say, well, what is she at risk for? Well, she's at risk for developing diabetes. She's at risk for blood. So you can bring them in and do these little stress tests on them, which, you draw their blood and give them some sugar and see so you simulate a pregnancy before you accept them into the program and see how their body handles it. And you can actually be pretty precise about whether that specific exact person is going to actually develop it rather than just be a little bit at risk for it. It's all, making the decisions to get you what you want is obviously a big part of it, but it's also doing it in a way that minimizes risk. And also the safety aspect, we didn't really, touch too much on, but we all have an obligation and responsibility to the egg donors and to the surrogates. And that sometimes you may have a goal that doesn't entirely, and it's a perfectly respectable goal, but in some surrogate, it may be pushing it too much and placing her at risks that we have to, out of protecting her, make sure that we don't go down that road. And some people, I think egg donors, 15, 18, 20 eggs, that's great, that's perfect, and that's more than enough. Could these women get 40 eggs? Yeah, I think someone said this morning someone had 40 eggs. We can probably stimulate people to have 100 eggs. It doesn't mean we will or should, and certainly doesn't mean it's safe. So that I think what differentiates egg donation and surrogacy in the U.S. in general from egg donation surrogacy, maybe in other places in the world, are actually those kinds of issues, just the things that are more about the safety and the protection and even the ethical considerations that we have to ask these women to do these things. It's just the way it is, but there need to be thoughtful limits placed on them too. And it's about you, but it's not only about you, which I know you know. I'm not suggesting you don't understand that. It's not about you. Wow, last time we were barely started and they told us we were done. It feels like we're got a lot of time here today. Okay. Yeah.
I'm just curious about the agencies you like to work with, who they are.
I'll tell you what their characteristics are, and then when we meet with people, no, you know what? I've been in practice 23 years. I'm at the point now. I'll just tell you, like I'll meet you, and we'll have a thoughtful conversation, and I'll get to know you. Jamie will do the same, and then we'll give you one. We'll tell you this, and this is why. So some of my diplomacy skills have kind of dissipated over the years, but because everyone's great, because they're not. Some are more business-like, some are more corporate-like, some are much more about they sign up a certain number of people every month, and some are larger, but I think the ones that we partner with are exactly focused on the word I just used is partnership. You and they and we and your surrogate have to actually work together, and in order to work effectively with someone, you have to be on the same page, and you have to be trying to accomplish the same goals. So the surrogacy agencies, there's a few. Victoria is definitely one of them. I'm happy to say that she's sitting here. They understand that, I didn't go to law school. I don't know I can't remember what states would be good if you're gay or you're from Ireland or you're whatever. And they're always changing. And so you definitely need lawyers that totally know the lay of the land and are never going to take you down a contractual road that would ever in any way risk your ability to have every right to your family. I really like the agencies that also realize that they didn't go to medical school, so that when it comes to decisions about egg donors, or how many embryos to transfer, or whether to freeze, or should we biopsy the embryos, or anything that has to do with the medical aspects, I feel like the agencies and the clinics that work the best together are the ones that recognize each other's strength and put you guys squarely in the middle of all the dialogues. At the end of the day, we'll tell you what we think, and it's not even that you're obligated to follow our instructions, but I think people that stay in their skill set and are very, very willing to not just support you, and I know there's been a lot of talk about supporting you, and I think that should be obvious. That's an implicit part of it, but I think the expertise part of it can't be underestimated, because just having been a surrogate, doesn't mean you should open a surrogacy agency out of your kitchen and build a website and outsource everything. And there's actually a lot of that. There's a lot of agencies that outsource absolutely everything. And they're based on really good-hearted people who used to donate their eggs and then they got too old, so then they became a surrogate, and then they opened their agent. And those are the agencies that I feel it's my responsibility to vet for you a little bit. Not necessarily to make you not work with, but to at least expose you to, by making that choice, what you might not be getting.